Woodwinds, highly misunderstood section. What I think people find difficult about woodwinds is the fact that they have such different sounds, and it makes it difficult to create blends with them, or at least more difficult than strings or brass. What most composers tend to do with woodwinds these days is either using them for melodies or doubling other instruments like strings or brass, but also creating texture. And this is all great, you know, it just works, yeah, but it's a little bit reductive of the full power and beauty that woodwinds can unveil. So what we're going to be talking about today is 4 different ways. Is it 4? Yeah, 4 different ways to, you know, arrange woodwinds, and more specifically 4 different ways to create different types of voicings. We're going to be starting with stacked. What this means is basically arranging woodwinds in such a way that each section is stacked on top of the next one. So let me show you with an example, and I'm gonna put some color coding in the video just so you can clearly see what each section does. In this case, we've got clarinets and flutes, and as you can see, let me hide the automations. The flutes and the clarinets never cross each other. They have been stacked carefully to create chords. So let's have a listen. It goes without saying that it doesn't have to be necessarily flutes and clarinets. You could have used oboes, obviously minding registers, yeah, making sure that all the parts are idiomatic for the instruments. But yeah, generally speaking, you know, you can stack all of the sections within a woodwind orchestra. So jumping on to the next example, as you can see, we've got the bassoons over here in green, then clarinets just like before, and then oboes in yellow and flutes in blue. So let's have a listen to this one. It's exactly the same music, but I kind of expanded it a little bit just to show you a bigger kind of stack. Yep. So it's pretty common to see a dancer stuck within the top and becoming, you know, thinner as we progress into the bottom, just so that we don't have the voicing sounding muddy. So what we have over here in the bassoons most of the time is basically, you know, octaves. But it doesn't have to be this way. You could create some open chords between clarinets and bassoons. And to top it all off, you could even do something very similar to what we had at the beginning, but spread across the 4 different sections. Once again, with the flutes in blue, oboes in yellow, clarinets in red, and bassoons in green. So let's have a listen to this one. This is very nice, of course, but bear in mind that registers can be a concern, right? Of course, I had to move the flute down an octave, for example, just to make it fit. Right, so this has been the first type of voicing. Once again, stacked woodwinds. The second type of voicing would be interlocked. And this is once again quite self-explanatory, going back to the first example with just flutes and clarinet. As you can see, we have the first flute on the top, then the first clarinet right below it, then the second flute, and then, you know, the second clarinet on the bottom voice. Let's have a listen. Let me very quickly compare it to the very first example we had today. So, as you can probably tell, the blend in the case of the interlocked voicings are a little bit more homogeneous. It's a little bit harder to tell apart the flutes from the clarinets, and this is amongst the things that work best, I think, when it comes to arranging for woodwinds. So let's have a listen to something different. Let's have a listen to oboe, cor anglais, and 2 clarinets as well. And it goes without saying, you can interlock clarinets and bassoons as well, if you like, or you can interlock oboes and bassoons if you like. You can do anything you like. So you may want to use interlocked voicings whenever, you know, you want to create a more homogeneous blend. Third type of voicing would be enclosed woodwinds. So going back to flutes and clarinets, let's have a listen to what we have over here first. So you guessed it, we have the flutes on the top and the bottom and the clarinets in the middle. I had to switch to an alto flute to, you know, cover the bottom voice, simply because, you know, like a regular flute wouldn't be able to project quite as much down there. Register is always a concern, should always be a concern when you're arranging for woodwinds. So this example, I think, has more in common with the very first example we played today, so the stacked woodwinds. So let me compare. This is enclosed. Stacked. Interlocked. Enclosed to me is different in the way that we have, by having more separation between the top and the bottom voice of the flute section, those are the more prominent voices, while the middle part of the voicing is the one that has more grip, is the one that has a little bit more blend. So you may want to use this type of voicing if you want to bring attention to the top and the bottom voice. Before we move on to the last type of voicing, I want to show you one of my personal favorites, which is bass clarinet on the bottom and just a regular clarinet on the top with the bassoons in the middle. Have a listen. So this does exactly what I tried to describe before, right? You know, brings prominence to the top and the bottom voice, with the middle part of the chord being a little bit more meaty. And I particularly love this, you know, combination because in the lower register, because it has a lot of darkness and grittiness, and it's particularly useful if you're going for that sort of mood with your orchestration. So last type of voicing, overlapped. Let's have a listen to the very first example and then I'll talk you through it. So what we've got over here is basically like a hybrid version of the stacked woodwinds that we had before, right? With just the flutes and the clarinets, you know, one on top of the other, and the enclosed version with the oboes right in the middle. So the first oboe is basically doubling the second flute, right? And the second oboe is doubling the first clarinet. You can see that the oboes in yellow are right in the center. So I think this is the type of voicing I use the least, simply because it brings a little bit too much attention to the middle part, to the core of the chords. This is not necessarily a bad thing, but what I prefer to do when it comes to, arranging overlapped woodwinds is usually using the oboe to double the top voice and then a cor anglais to double the bottom voice. So that's it. These are the 4 different types of voicings you get when you're arranging for woodwinds. And obviously it goes without saying that you can mix and match together, just to create more interesting results and kind of, make the arrangement stand out a little bit more. As an extra, I created a little piece, a little woodwind, chorale kind of thing, just to show you how you can mix and match different types of voicings together. And so let's start by having a listen, and then I'm gonna talk you through a couple of details here and there, and then we'll call it a day. As you can see, I started with some interlocked voicings with clarinets and oboes, basically covering the chords, and with a flute melody on the top, of course. And then right around bar 82, I switched to stacked voicings. This is simply because I wanted for the chords to have a simpler kind of quality. Same over here, we still have some stacked voicings. Interestingly, at 86, we have a little bit of everything. So it looks the MIDI looks a little bit messy, but what we basically have over here is exactly what I tried to describe before. When it came to the enclosed voicings. If I isolate just the bassoons and the clarinets, you can see that we've got the bass clarinet on the very bottom, the bassoons in the middle, and the clarinets on the top. And then on 89, I'm basically going back to interlocking the flutes with the oboes, kind of like what we had at the very beginning of the piece, and keeping, the bassoons and the clarinets kind of the same way pretty much throughout the rest of the piece. On 90, bar 90, it's just a simple, flute and oboe doubling in octaves, with the oboes being stacked on top of the enclosed voicings between clarinets and bassoons, and so on and so forth. Just to recap what we talked about today, stacked have a more basic, simple sound with good definition, good degree of clarity between the different sections. Still pretty easy to tell apart, but they create, a very nice blend, something you can default to. Then we've got interlocked voicings that are the more homogeneous sound, the more homogeneous blend. It's kind of hard to tell apart one section from the next. Then we talked about the enclosed voicings that were, the ones with the flutes on the top, the clarinets in the middle, and the flutes on the bottom as well. And then overlapped, right? Where we basically stack 2 sections and use another section to either overlap the middle, the central part of the chord, or the 2 extremities, so the top and the bottom. That's everything for today. I hope you found the video useful. If you want to learn more about this and want to grab this session or the MIDI, you can grab it from my Patreon. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.